Sacramento Metropolitan Fire District Policy Committee. And why don't we go ahead and start with a flag salute? We don't always, but we can.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have a action item number 1, approve the action summary and minutes of the last meeting. Do I have a?
Chair, you may want to just at least make the announcement that, and check if there's any public that wants to address the group.
Is there any public at this time? Do we have any cards that want to?
No, we do not.
Okay. So seeing none, go on to action item, action summary minutes.
Make a motion, we approve the minutes of August 22nd, 2013, the last minutes of the board, the policy committee.
I'm going to abstain because I wasn't here.
Okay, I'll second it.
Thank you.
So we have a motion that's been brought and seconded. Call the roll.
Director Gould,
Aye.
Director Pearson,
Aye.
Director Scheidegger,
I'm going to abstain because I was not here.
motion passes.
Okay, our action item, first one is election of officers. Do I have any comments on that?
Mr. Pearson, do you want to continue?
Sure.
I make a motion, we appoint, or recommend that we appoint Mr. Pearson as chair of the policy committee.
I'll second that.
Okay, we can do a vice chair at the same time, make it one motion? Is
Sure.
that correct? Yeah. A motion for vice chair?
Grant, you want to do that?
Sure.
I make a motion that we appoint Grant Gould as vice chair.
I second that. Okay, we have 2 motions. Call the roll.
Director Gould,
Aye.
Director Pearson,
Aye.
Director Scheidegger,
Aye.
motion passes.
All right, now we have a presentation, leadership legacy recognition. Chief Wells.
Good evening, Policy Committee. Mark Wells, Deputy Chief of Administration. This evening, also, Director Roselli, we're actually going to be facilitating a discussion this evening regarding the Leadership Legacy Recognition Program. And essentially, this is a concept that myself and Director Arzali, he came to the fire chief and myself, and we had a discussion about.
2,700 letters were sent out in
Kill it.
December to.
There you go.
All right, finally the voice of reason. So basically, the concept was introduced by Director Orzali and essentially what is being proposed is basically a district to honor, the district honoring individuals who had made significant and durable contributions to the overall district success. The recognition would be awarded by the Board of Directors. And basically, it's supposed to be, or the intent of this would be.
I apologize, but if you don't close this down, it's going to keep running.
It's your fault, Wells.
Oh, that's the director's cut.
All right, gentlemen.
Thank you. Okay. Essentially, the policy has been given to you tonight in conceptual form in 2 different forms. One is a standalone policy, and then the other is incorporated within the award and accommodation policy that exists. But specifically, the items, and I really would like Director Orzali to actually help facilitate the dialogue, because essentially the program itself, it isn't designed to be a standard recognition of things that we normally do. It's the understanding that we don't actually have anything in place that recognizes a large, significant, monumental change program, successful model that'll live into perpetuity, or at least an extended period of time beyond this individual's tenure here at the district. And so, Director Roselli, you want to lead in and kind of give the bullet points of,
Well, absolutely, Chief.
in fact, that's the.
So as the chief explained, this idea is fundamentally to fill a niche that's presently absent in our awards recognitions. And it's to recognize individuals whose contributions will extend beyond their tenure with the organization for bringing resources, facilities, money, equipment, those kinds of things. This is not to be confused with recognitions for many of the heroic events that our folks do every single day. This is a separate category intended to recognize those people who make a long-term contribution, and even though they'll be gone, I'll be gone, we'll all be gone, they will still be present in the sense of creating a history and recognizable sense of memoriam to what they did and who they were. We've all seen organizations where great contributions are made. That person leaves, the board leaves, however that goes, but the awareness of what they did is lost. I'd like to not have that be the case with Metro Fire. So, with that, there are details to be worked out in terms of nominations and so forth, but my proposal has been that the chief would have one vote, the board president would have one vote, and that the most recent 3 recipients of this award would have one vote. In that way, they would continue to make a contribution, recipients would continue to make a contribution, even though they might have left the service. So, are there questions I can answer for you?
Yeah, on with it being a legacy award, do you have some sort of vision of the type of award? Are we going to have a plaque somewhere? Are we going to have names up somewhere?
I do, actually. What I'm envisioning is a designated wall somewhere here in the headquarters that has the person's picture and a concise but accurate statement of what their contributions were, why are they being recognized in this way. And it would be hung in a specific area within perhaps the boardroom.
Go ahead.
I had a question. Does a person have to be retired to be nominated, or be retiring to be nominated?
Not in my view, not
Okay,
at all.
So, yeah,
No. I'm just thinking of an individual who received this award, and then maybe it's 15 years later, after they receive their award, that they retire, and even then, their contribution continues to be recognized.
Good.
Randy, I have a couple of questions, Mr. Chair, if it's okay. I'm really supportive of these kinds of initiatives. In the material we received, a lot of the benefits that you propose, I think, are well stated. A couple of questions for you. It talks about an employee is who gets nominated.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering, we have had recent history where we have given a fairly prestigious award to a non-employee who had significant impact to the district. And so my only concern is are we talking about just employees that would receive this award, or any individual that's had a significant impact? And let me give you an example. We deal with a lot of vendors as an agency of our size. Some of those vendors have been with us for quite a while. There may be a case where a vendor, a specific vendor, has had a huge impact on this district over a long period of time. It seems like, given what this is described as, they too would be potentially a candidate for that legacy recognition. And so that's my first question. I'm very supportive of this. Obviously, the devil's in the details, and you've been very clear to say, once you kind of tentatively approve the idea, we'll move forward with some of the details. So I'm prepared to support this with the idea that the devil's in the details still going to get worked out. It'll come back to us as a policy once those details are all worked out, so they can be clearly articulated in the policy. And then thirdly, I'm supportive of it being integrated into our current policies on awards and recognitions and those things versus a standalone. I think that might create a bit of precedence that we may not want to get into by standalone recognitions or standalone awards. So I would propose that we move forward on something like this, but embed it within our current board policy on awards and recognitions. So what are your thoughts, Randy?
Well, with regard to the last item, I have no real issues with whether or not it's a standalone or embedded into the policies. Having it incorporated into the policies makes absolute sense in that it is part of our ongoing recognition of individual contributions. The other item, the first item, discussion about going to vendors, for example. That's within the realm of possibility, but it is candidly not in the scope of the original intent. Doesn't mean it can't be expanded through this debate, but the concept of leadership legacy is an important piece that this body is going to need to help define the parameters. In fact, as I mentioned, in the nominations, my proposal is that one vote would go to the chief, one vote would go to the president of the board. In the absence of in the time when there aren't 3 recipients, it would be this body that would be, or the executive committee that would be making those decisions until there are in fact 3 recipients, which was likely to take some time. So with that said, I think what I'm proposing here is exactly what's been described, that this be approved in concept, the issues that have been addressed be further refined, it comes back to this body and then goes to the board for final approval.
You know, that's my recommendation. I think too, that you talk about a committee being assigned. Is it your intent that once we approve the concept and move it forward, that committee to flesh out the details be assigned by the board total or the policy? What's your intent there?
You know, I'm really thinking that that's a question for the executive committee,
Okay.
and at least that's my approach to it.
I think the chief was going to chime in.
Well, I was, when Director Orzali brought this 6 months ago, I think, probably. And I kind of wanted to, as you fold it into the general policy that we have, my understanding is this is not something that goes out on a yearly basis.
Right.
It might be 5 or 10 years or something between something being put out that way. So I would just, if that's still the intent, that you'd want to be careful that you don't have it in the setup where every year it's like, and I don't take anything away from this, but firefighter of the year or something that we do on a regular basis. I think this was something that was more removed from that and something that was of a huge impact. Is that accurately reflected?
Chief, is exactly the intent. One of my concerns, and it says it in the document, is that mishandled, this will become perfunctory, and it becomes your turn to win it. And that is counterproductive. It serves no one's good. I'm looking for this, and that's why, in fact, I suggested that previous recipients be involved in making that judgment, because they're then looking at the criteria and saying, do these contributions, good as they are, meet the criteria that we've established?
And holding the bar.
Exactly.
Well, I think the other thing too is we really don't want this kind of award to have any kind of timeline parameters, because it's based on the achievements of an individual that is nominated. And so it could be a 2-year, 3-year, 10-year. We won't know until we make nominations available and then have the committee set up. But I think it's also a little artificial that you not tie it to nominations versus on an annual basis or every 2 years or whatever, because you might have a candidate that's ready for this award next month. And we don't know that until we get the details flushed out, and then we make it available for people to nominate.
My only
I
thought-
think maybe the
Yeah,
committee can come up with
Yeah.
nominations will be accepted at a certain time, and we can go that route, but the awarding can be at a different time.
Well, and I think the other thing is that if you have nominations, the bottom line is the committee can say none of these meet that
Correct.
thing, thank you very much, and the award doesn't get given out and it moves on. But I think
Exactly.
Director Orzali's, comments are spot on, is that if this becomes a perfunctory thing, then it's really, not, it loses its value or whatever for the organization.
Well, I think we also have to make a lot of people aware of the criteria, which we don't right now have, so that people can measure who they know and what experiences they've had against the criteria. We don't even have that yet, so.
Absolutely, and one last point, I have had the discussion with legal counsel that conceptually, their office would handle the balloting for nominations so that those individuals who have a vote in it would be able to vote with anonymity. So it comes back to, yes, you have the correct number of points or you do not. Helping to preserve that sense of this is the real deal, and if you're a recipient, you did something.
On that, with the award, going back to the actual award itself and the wall, you know, part of it, I don't want to get too far into the weeds and the details, but, you know, in Boy Scouts, they have Court of Honors and they have an Eagle Court of Honor. And there's a specific way to do it, and the Eagle Court of Honor actually is, you know, more pomp and circumstance because it's a big award. With that, maybe somewhere in this we can also, because you don't want 15 years down the road, like you say, this to be your turn to win it, and it's just a yearly thing, and we throw it in with some other banquet. Oh yeah, and so is getting this award too at this banquet. Maybe make some sort of provision in there that this is what the award's going to look like. This is the wall, how it's all, because it should be really special.
Absolutely.
Maybe, and have a special banquet just for that. Maybe stated in the policy that it's for this award, it won't be tied in with, you know, the yearly. Because I think if you did tie it in, you know, Firefighter of the Year is a great award, you know, well-deserved, and the same sort of thing that we do with some sort of heroism type award, those are great. But if we're going to make this truly different, maybe we should state in that policy that this is not to be tied in with another banquet or another award dinner.
I wholly agree with the spirit of that.
Randy, I might also suggest that this committee that's put together look retroactively. Just because we're going to, you know, implement the policy in the next couple of months and have it dialed in, doesn't mean we can't look back in history from the beginning of this organization in 2000 and look for individuals who qualify under those criteria as well.
Absolutely true.
So we may have a bucket load of candidates that could be nominated retrospectively. And so I think we're in good place. Like I said, I'm fully supportive of this. I think it's a great idea. Let's move forward. In my mind, Mr. Chair, I would say that as a group, it is an action item. So are you looking tonight, Randy, for us to vote, moving this conceptually forward to the full board?
You know, since it is an action item, I don't see any downside to doing that. Because there are going to be continuous tweaks along the way before it actually goes to the board.
Okay.
So from now on, with this action item, then from now on, the whole board will be discussing those little tweaks you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I don't have a problem with that. You good?
Or it may be quicker to tentatively move this forward, have the committee developed, have some more details put into this document, come back to a three-person group for review and discussion before it moves to the full board. Typically, the more people involved, the longer
Right,
it's gonna take to make that
that's kinda
move
what I
through,
was thinking.
right? And we can always pull our colleagues and ask them to read the growing document and give us their insight without it having to be a
Well, I would
formal board.
have no objection to the idea of this group becoming that working committee.
Right, because I mean, it is a policy is what you're
Right,
proposing. And
exactly.
my understanding is that's exactly what this committee's here for. So I would think that it would be best to be be working on in this committee, and then as we get it something that we can throw to the full board, then we make a presentation item, get their input and make those final tweaks.
Well, at the pleasure of the board, as to whether or not we vote on it tonight, or whether you vote on it tonight, that's really at your discretion.
Yeah, I don't think there's a reason to vote. If you're gonna go back, I mean, we've given you our input. We like the idea. Madam Clerk, I mean, there's really not an action item that I see
Well,
that
but-
we would take.
Yeah, I agree, but at the same time, I think it's important to institutionalize this discussion
That
by
we
having
support it?
the policy board take a vote that then allows the group to then move forward and get a committee together and all that. There's no downside, except we're saying to them, yes, we voted, move forward, conceptually, we support it. And it's on the record that we did that, so if 6 months from now, somebody says, why are you doing all that work? Well, the policy committee voted and gave us that direction and we move forward.
If I can, I would just recommend, not having any dog in the fight here, that's probably the cleanest way. Have an action item that you've got it before you, you vote that you support it, and you guys put together as a policy committee, work on what the ifs, ands, and buts are going to be of the details, and then take it to the full board.
So, Mr. Chair, let me do this. Let me make a motion that we approve in concept the idea of a leadership legacy recognition award or recommendation, and that we give Chief Wells and Director Rosales, President Rosales, the oomph to move forward and develop this policy more fully and in more detail,
And bring it back to us,
and certainly bring it back to us.
and then we'll move and act on it then.
So I need a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, now that I have a motion that makes sense, yes. Call the roll.
Directors Gould,
Aye.
Director Pearson,
Yeah,
Director Scheidegger.
Aye.
Motion passes.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Madam Clerk is up.
So the next item before you is review of your policy and procedures manual. This document was adopted in 2001. Since then, you have taken several actions that have actually not been incorporated in the document. And in addition to that, so what I have done is gone through and actually used strikeouts to show those changes that should most likely be reflected in the document. In addition to that, you have practices in place that aren't necessarily consistent with what is in the document. So staff is now recommending that you review these policies, review particularly the strikeout and comment sections, and then there may be other areas that you wish to have discussion or comment on as well. One of the other issues to discuss before this document is fully revised is if this document currently is a standalone document, and so one of the questions is to leave it as that, or as to put it in the form of your other district board policies and procedures.
Mr. Chair, I think obviously it's 2014 and we haven't visited this puppy for 13 years. I think it's long overdue for a revision and update. However, I would support the idea that these policies directed at the board start to reflect some of the changes in how they look in all of our other policies, whether it be administrative or operate. So I'm supportive of this committee beginning the process of reviewing the entire packet that we have in front of us, adding and deleting as necessary, and transitioning this document to look more like the policies that we have in our other areas, so that there's consistency for everyone involved.
But still maintaining it as a standalone policy?
Well, I think that's just a collating function, you know. I think that you can collate it and say these policies, when this branch are the policies affecting the board, and it becomes basically our board packet for policies. I think that's more of a collation kind of function.
Yeah, I maybe used the wrong terminology. It would be a standalone policy, but it would have the look and formatting
Okay.
of what your other district
That
policies are.
makes sense.
And so is the pleasure of the committee. A couple ways we could go that the clerk and I discussed. You could go through tonight and at least look at the strikeouts if you chose to do that. Or you could choose to do nothing tonight and set up a special workshop where you're going to go through item by item by item on this to put it together. That's what I'm trying to figure out, what you guys, how you want to facilitate moving this forward.
I
Because what
need
the
more
clerk's
time to
done is
review
she's
it.
gone through and highlighted out stuff that no longer is apropos and inserted what we're actually doing today on that stuff, which seemed pretty simplistic. There are other items in here, not a lot, that I have identified that need to probably be changed. And so I would recommend almost a workshop setting for an hour, or dedicating one of these meetings to an hour of going through it.
Yeah,
I agree.
And I agree with it. I will take your word on this stuff as far as how you file things and how you do things that we've changed and we're not doing it correctly. The one item that I had a concern on, and I want to make sure that we are, because of these times, it dealt with the pay, and it's not a lot, but in here it was 100, and I think we bumped it to 110, and we're just making that change. And it is a minor, I don't think we're going to have anybody getting upset, but anytime I think an electric board does something with their pay, I like to have a little bit of
Well,
science behind it, so
Yeah.
maybe we could reach out and look at other boards, see where we're at. I don't know, just, I'd like some more information on that. And I know that we've changed it, but
there's also
Where?
a section in healthcare where part of it's covered and part isn't, and I think we
Right.
need to be consistent in that, especially with the new pre-funding mechanism that we have in place, that maybe that's an area that can be revisited. It's got 1994, if I remember right, from 1994, I think was the last change that I saw in there.
On the
On the health-
healthcare, yes, on the healthcare
And
section.
so I think, there needs to be a discussion, and I know that was from a staff perspective. It was not from a board perspective, but, now that you've got a pre-funding mechanism in place that pays for it, should the board be involved in that as well? Since they already are involved in the other parts, are allowed to participate in dental and vision in that. So those are the types of things that I think need to come back, be really vetted out as part of the changes, and then move to the full board for adoption. And clearly, the public would want to know that, and Director Pearson hits on it. It's $100 a meeting, which is just outrageous, why it would be that much money for you guys to volunteer your
way
time.
overpaid.
I say that facetiously, but most people don't understand that. They think that you're drawing some sort of salary for sitting up here, and that's not the case. So, they need to hear about it, but I think from the prospect of when they hear about it, they'll be shocked that it really is what it is. It's not what they thought it was.
Yeah, and I'm not looking to raise, I just want to make sure, because in there, it looks like we're raising it, and I don't want to give that appearance that we're just doing that
Yeah.
without some sort of research
Yeah,
or
if I could
something.
explain the salary part, you are governed by both the health and safety code as far as what you can be paid, and any change to salary wouldn't actually be done through this action. It has to be done through an ordinance process, and it's limited, I believe it's to 5% or something per year. So you could make a recommendation, and then you would still have to go through a two-step process and a public hearing process to deal with that. So what is in there is what was done back in 2012 to be effective in 2013.
Okay, go ahead, Jared.
My comments are that I think the board clerk has done a good job in starting with those comments in red, and we ought to build on that. A couple areas that concern me were the Finance Committee and the Audit Committee charters. We're now a Finance and Audit Committee. And I would suggest that, for example, we might want to enlist the services of Ms. McFarland, for example, offline, as a precursor to that staff session or that workshop session, to take a look at that and look at some ideas in terms of consolidating that. I'm sure we want to look at ensuring that the audit functions in terms of permitting the auditor, reviewing the function of the auditor and the annual reviews and all of that are adequately done. So I think it'd be a good idea to defer this for a workshop and perhaps seek a little bit more staff input before we do that.
So, Madam, my question is, we have concerns, and you had mentioned that there are some things that you've lined out that we're not doing anymore. Us not taking action on that, that doesn't affect your ability to do your job, or
No.
we're not in any kind of legal limbo of how we're filing or doing things? We're okay?
Now, some of these items, you have actually adopted resolutions or motions somewhere. They just haven't been incorporated in the document. So it's more of a document revision. Those are the strikeouts. The comments are maybe areas where your practice may be slightly different than what the document says.
And you can continue to do it the way we're
Exactly.
doing it, but it's not really per the policy until we change it, but
Correct.
we can, all right. And when you guys say a special workshop, are you looking for outside of this committee, like come in?
No, I think you'd like to have it, just another date, another policy
So
meeting
another
that
in
would take a
February?
little longer and only be focused on this.
Okay, a special one or the one in February?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, if you're going to do outreach to staff, then February's here, in essence. And so what I would recommend is that I believe your next policy meeting would actually be in March, would it not? Is
It's
it-
actually February
27th?
27th.
End of
Okay.
February.
Um,
That's still too close.
A month?
Well, I mean, if you guys can, if the committee can review it, and we can get staff time to input on it and get it done, then that's great. We could target for that. If not, we could always come back to the committee and say, you know what, let's go ahead and come back with the final in March, but let's shoot for February 27th and see what we can do. I don't see a lot of major changes in here.
No.
And the document's not been looked at for 13
Right.
years. I think we're okay to wait 60 more days
Yeah.
to start working on it. The other thing I would ask us to do is step back for just a minute. We grabbed this baby in 2000 and kind of worked on it for a while. It was the collective work of several people from different agencies, and we kind of landed on this document that came from the two combining agencies. I'm wondering if what we ought to do is stand back from this document for a minute and actually look at it and think what elements of this document could really become a handbook. What are just simply things of how you conduct business and how you function as a director, and put that in a handbook? Because what I'm concerned with is if we look at this as a policy, then we're bound to follow it. If we don't follow it, we violate our own issues, and we can be held accountable for that. So I would say go back through this document and look for those things where we make them policies, they become rigid standards of behavior that we have to always refer back to, and then pierce our, get out of this document those elements that have just been lopped in there over time and are really more handbook things. Because if you look at the TOC, or table of contents, you'll see a lot of things in here that aren't a policy. They're more of a, this is a standard way we do business, and we should be able to change those without having to go back to policy review and policy, meetings, and we can just say, tonight, this is our decision. We write it into our new handbook, and that's how we function. If we're required to do it by policy, it seems like it ought to be a lot more rigid. And I'm concerned that you can just go through here and you can start finding things where we say things and they could be interpreted as a policy, and yet we don't do them. And does that put us as a board into a situation where we're building our own policies and then not following them? Doesn't make any sense at all. So I would say to my colleagues on this group, look at this document as potentially being able to be kind of separated. What are things that can just be handbook kind of material, and what are things that we really need to institutionalize as policy? The board shall act this way. If you want to change it, you have to go back through this policy committee process to change, and we will always perform our behavior according to policy. And then which things, you come in as the president, or Randy comes in and says, I'd like to change it to Wednesdays. If that's a policy, then we have to go through the policy committee and have all that hoo-ha, versus if it's a handbook, we can, that night, just decide and we make a change to the handbook and we're on our way. So I think we ought to take a look at that, because this really is a document. I was involved in it at the beginning. Let me tell you, it was just bring your stuff and we'll kind of throw her together, because we're a brand-new organization, and a lot of things reside there that sounded good, but maybe we haven't done a very good job of reviewing them.
Well, I think what we ought to do then is maybe meet next month, continue to talk about this, not with the goal of having a finished product.
Right.
We're going to meet next month and continue to talk about this, maybe give more direction to staff, hear what they have brought so far to then, and then in March, we'll meet again, and if it's not done, we'll continue it into April. But like you said, it's 13 years old. So,
And I'm just concerned that if we make policy and then we don't follow it, that's something that the citizenry ought to, get nervous about and come in and hold us accountable for. You're making policies and not following them? So I think we should look back and say, really, does that need to be a policy, or is it just a handbook or a procedure? We can have a lot of procedures that don't necessarily need to be policy. So anyway, that's just my take on it from being involved back in 2000, when we kind of were just gathering stuff and making it work.
does that make sense, Chief? You think it?
Well, yeah, as a staff member, I will tell you that, but I'm not a board member. I want the policy manual to say what the policy manual is, because if it's going to have accountability stuff, it's got to be in there, because staff's got to follow that. And I
Absolutely.
think it's a legal document that you're putting together. If you want to change like Director Gould's talking, dates of like meetings and stuff like that. You know, we talked before in a planning session, I think, about Tuesdays. Remember, we talked about Tuesdays and what the reason was, why we're on Thursdays, and that, and about the week. You probably would, not this, I wouldn't be concerned with this board, but for any board into perpetuity, I want to be careful that we can't just have somebody that come in on the whim of a note and change what dates we're meeting and stuff, and all of a sudden it throws everything off. I'd like to have, at least in a policy, where there's a thought process on that. So
Absolutely.
I don't disagree that a handbook's a good idea, because for staff, but on the policies, as I go through here, and I look at like standing committees, special committees, the charter for each standing committee, and all the things that they have in there, that stuff to me is kind of black and white, that is the way we need to do it, because I've got to be able to follow this probably
Absolutely.
as well. So I'm open to that. Why don't we have that next meeting and sit down, and you guys will have some time to digest it. And as Deputy Chief Mark Wells says, go slow to go fast.
Right.
And make sure that we get it right.
Yep.
I like it. We'll make it. We'll continue this discussion then. All right. Any other items? You
So
guys-
it is an action item, Mr. Chair.
Well, I think we're just going to continue it to next week. We give we can give the recommendation to, again, we got to word this right, because the recommendation here is consider revisions to the Board of Directors' policies and procedures.
So I make a motion that we consider revisions to the Board of Directors' Policies and Procedures Manual.
And we're going to deal with it next month on an
Yeah,
ongoing
we're going to
basis, so we
continue to
can tweak,
revise
yeah.
and consider.
I'll second that.
Okay.
It's just when we put an item on an agenda that says there's going to be
There'll be action. We're going to
we
take
need
action.
Formal action so that it's documented into perpetuity, that we're just not throwing items up on a action calendar and then not taking a vote or those kind of things, unless you're deciding to table it, which would be a whole different Brown Act kind of thing, so.
No, as long as we are following, I didn't want to take an action that we were approving or anything like that. And that's not what we're doing. That was my concern. We're not taking an action that we're approving what was in this document that was given to us. What we're approving is that we're going to continue to look at the document.
Correct.
Director Gould,
Yes.
Director Pearson,
Aye.
and Director Scheidegger.
Aye.
Okay, anything else, gentlemen?
Nope, good job.
Nope. Okay, meeting's adjourned till next February 27th at 5 PM here. Thank you.